السيد الأمين العام الحضور الكريم.
Secretary General, esteemed attendees, I address you on behalf of the Palestinian people at a decisive moment, difficult and challenging due to the systematic practices of the Israeli occupation government, which commits acts of genocide, killing, destruction, and starvation against our people in the Gaza Strip without deterrence or accountability, undermining the two-state solution and tightening the noose on the Palestinian people and their national institutions to prevent the realization of an independent Palestinian state of sovereignty and destroy peacemaking efforts, leaving our region and the world in a state of tension and instability. Our urgent priorities today are to reach an immediate and lasting ceasefire, release the hostages and Palestinian prisoners, and provide urgent humanitarian aid, especially food and medical supplies, to the Gaza Strip, in addition to the withdrawal of occupation forces. The complete Israeli withdrawal from the territory and enabling the state of Palestine to fully assume its responsibilities, leading to a comprehensive truce and ending settlers' crimes and ongoing assaults on holy sites of Islamic and Christian sites, and moving towards a political process that ends the occupation based on international legitimacy resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. We call upon you to support the efforts for an international peace conference to end the occupation, embody the two-state solution, and establish an independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. The most urgent matter at this moment is to stop the genocide against our people in the Gaza Strip, where civilians are being killed in front of aid distribution centers and are suffering from deliberate starvation by the authorities. The Israeli occupation aims to instill despair in the hearts of Palestinians and push them towards displacement and expulsion. This situation is unbearable and cannot be tolerated, necessitating urgent action from all your parliaments. This necessitates urgent action and pressure on your governments by the United Nations and all its institutions to pressure Israel to immediately allow the entry of food and medical supplies to rescue thousands of children, women, and the elderly who are dying of hunger due to the blockade, and humanitarian aid is not being allowed in. At the same time, the Palestinian Authority is facing a siege exceeding $2 billion by the Israeli government in a clear attempt to undermine the work of the Palestinian government and cripple its ability to fulfill its commitments to our people. And while we appreciate your support and principled stances in championing the causes of justice and humanity, we look forward to your urgent intervention and taking practical steps to stop the policy of starvation and ensure the immediate entry of humanitarian aid, in addition to pressing for the immediate release of tax funds to enable the Palestinian National Authority to fulfill its vital duties towards our Palestinian people. In conclusion, we appeal to you in the International Parliament, in the Interparliamentary Union, and your parliaments. We call on you to immediately intervene to stop this humanitarian disaster, to compel Israel to cease its aggression, lift its siege, and stop settler crimes. Turn your solidarity stances into actions, and let your parliaments raise their voices in defense of freedom, justice, and human dignity, so that peace may prevail in the Middle East and throughout the world. Peace be upon you.
In the name of God, the Compassionate and the Merciful, distinguished co-chairs, Excellencies, for nearly 80 years, significant concessions have been granted to the occupying regime in the Palestinian territories. The policy of appeasement has proven ineffective in achieving peace, instead legitimizing and reinforcing the Israeli regime expansionist policies. The Gaza Strip has been reduced to rubble, and tens of thousands of inhabitants have been brutally slaughtered. Meanwhile, the regime intend to annex the West Bank to previously occupied Palestinian territory. Besides, the so-called Abraham Accord proved to be of no added value for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question. Rather, it merely emboldened the regime to reinforce and continue its destabilizing policies in Palestine and beyond. The regime brutality in violation of international law and the UN Charter further extended to the territory of sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. From 13 to 25 June, the Iranian vital infrastructure, scientists, civilians, including women and children, and civilian objects, as well as the IAEA safeguard nuclear facilities, were targeted by unprovoked attacks by the Israeli regime, abated with the US direct engagement. Distinguished colleagues, the Charter described the principles of self-determination and imposed upon the United Nations to duty to respect the right of each nation to choose freely to be master of its destiny. With such conviction, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms its principled position that the lasting peace and security in the region can only be achieved through the establishment of an independent sovereign state of Palestine rooted in the genuine will of the original inhabitant regardless of their religion, as would be expressed in a free and inclusive referendum. The Islamic Republic of Iran firmly believes that any genuine initiative to realize the inalienable right of the Palestinian people must include the following core principles. 1. A just and lasting peace in Palestine can only be achieved through the full realization of the Palestinian people's inherent right to continued resistance and self-determination and to complete the end of occupation, apartheid, and all forms of colonial domination. Second, the Palestinian admission as a full member of the United Nations must be prioritized. The Security Council, under Article 4 of the UN Charter, is duty-bound to recommend Palestine membership. This process must not be obstructed by the United States. 3. The occupying regime must be held fully accountable for its systematic and widespread violation of international humanitarian and human rights law, including war crimes, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and its prolonged illegal occupation and apartheid policies. No form of immunity and impunity should shield such egregious violations. In light of its continued defiance of the UN Charter, the Israeli regime must face targeted sanction and suspension of its UN membership to protect the integrity and credibility of the organization. Any attempt to normalize relations with the Israeli occupying regime, as long as it persists in its illegal occupation and atrocity crimes, is a betrayal of international law and justice. Such actions undermine regional and international peace and security, confer unwarranted legitimacy on the criminal practices of the Israeli regime, and further embolden it to perpetrate grave violation of international law with impunity. We call for a sustainable solution and warn that any solution that is rooted in apartheid, injustice, and inequality will not be a sustainable one. I thank you.
Mr. Co-Chairs, at the outset, my delegation wishes to express its appreciation to France and Saudi Arabia for convening this conference and to thank the co-chairs of the working groups for their dedicated efforts. In an era where strength is frequently regarded as a prerequisite for peace, this gathering should serve as a poignant reminder that only through patient and inclusive dialogue a just and lasting conflict resolution can be achieved. Mr. Co-Chairs, in the light of the profound anguish and terrible human suffering that has befallen the region, the Holy See reiterates its unequivocal condemnation of the heinous terrorist attack of 7 October by Hamas against the people of Israel. Terrorism can never be justified. At the same time, the Holy See emphasizes that the right to self-defense should be exercised within the traditional limit of necessity and proportionality. The Holy See remains gravely concerned by the worsening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. The devastating impact on civilians, especially the number of children killed, has been compounded by the destructions of homes, hospitals, and places of worship, with the recent attack on the Holy Family Church further wounding an already distressed community. This is deeply concerning given that Christians in the region have long played a vital role as a moderating and stabilizing presence, promoting dialogue and peace. The mass displacement of families, the breakdown of essential services, growing famine, and widespread deprivation shock the human conscience and require an immediate coordinated response from the international community. Therefore, the Holy See urgently calls for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all Israeli hostages, the restitutions of the bodies of the deceased, the protection of all Palestinian civilians in accordance with international humanitarian law, and unhindered access to humanitarian assistance. Mr. Co-Chairs, the Holy See remains convinced that the two-state solution based on a secure and international recognized borders is the only viable and equitable path towards a just and lasting peace. To support this vision, the Holy See has already taken meaningful steps. It formally recognized the State of Israel through the 1993 Fundamental Agreement and the State of Palestine through the 2015 Comprehensive Agreement. It continues to uphold the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination. The Holy See supports their legitimate aspiration to live in freedom, security, and dignity within an independent and sovereign state. Mr. Co-Chairs, Jerusalem is a city of universal religion and cultural significance. It is sacred to Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. Therefore, it requires a status that transcends political divisions and ensures the preservation of its unique identity. To this end, the Holy See reiterates its long-standing call for an international guaranteed special status capable of ensuring the dignity and rights of all its inhabitants and the faithful of the three monotheistic religions, the equality before the law of their institutions and communities, safeguarding the city's sacred character and the exceptional religious and cultural heritage. Furthermore, it must ensure the protection of the holy places, guarantee the unhindered right to access them and to worship there. It must also preserve the status quo where applicable. In Jerusalem, no one should be subjected to harassment. Therefore, it is regrettable that Christians feel increasingly threatened in the old city of Jerusalem. Mr. Co-Chairs, my delegation sincerely hopes that this conference will help build trust and strengthen the commitment of all parties to pursuing peace. Thank you very much.
Allow me to take the floor and, in the honor of Palestine, to express our solidarity with the State of Palestine. Here I present the statement of the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, who was unable to make the statement himself. At the outset, allow me to express my thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for chairing this meeting at a difficult time, which is not enabling a serious effort towards peace. This international conference, with such a broad-based participation, allows us to focus on the crime of the century, which reminds us of the somber times of history, and we hope that it will never happen again. We think that those that were victims of crimes against humanity would understand the sense of humanity, that those who had lived through ethnic cleansing would never practice it, that those who were victims of genocide and its horrors would not be tempted to commit this crime of genocide that we are seeing today. the plans of which have been announced in Gaza and the OPT. We must denounce this crime in all of its gravity and the tragedy that it causes. They are the continuum of another crime, that is occupation. A crime that the ICJ has asked to be brought to an end as soon as possible. What we're seeing today in Gaza, the withdrawal of stability and security in the region, is indeed the outcome of the ongoing occupation. This is the price being paid by Palestinians, a price paid in blood, a price paid by the populations across the region in terms of the stability and future. It is the price paid by the entire world in terms of stability and security. It's an extremely high price that we are all paying for the system of apartheid and occupation to remain on this land. The vision set out by the state, representatives of civil society and organizations during the preparatory meeting within the 8 thematic working groups that were cited in the outcome document very clearly show that there is clear international will and that it represents the majority for the Israeli settlement building to stop. It also shows that another future is possible for the region, that is, for peaceful coexistence. But this future will only happen where there is a viable Palestinian state that can be a fully fledged member of the United Nations to do away with the stain that we have at the moment. The League of Arab States remains committed to the Arab Peace Initiative adopted in Beirut 23 years ago. That is the full withdrawal from Arab lands and the end of occupation against the normalization, the integration and peaceful coexistence. This vision hasn't, however, been reciprocated. Rather, it has been countered by arrogance and nationalism based on religious sectarian views that will lead the region to an unknown future. If everyone, particularly civil organizations, are not involved in this process, there will be no change. In conclusion, this conference represents a turning point for the Middle East, for Palestine, in Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere. The League of Arab States will continue to strive alongside Saudi Arabia and France, alongside the chairs of the working groups, with the immense majority of states, peace-loving states, in the General Assembly, this democratic forum. We will continue to work for all states and all organizations to commit to ensure that Palestine is recognized at the 80th General Assembly session. And the League of Arab States will continue to support an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, based on the proposals made by France, the UK, and peace-loving states. Thank you.
Distinguished co-chairs and excellencies, at the outset, I would like to thank the co-chairs France and Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this high-level conference. I also commend the efforts of the chairs of the 8 working groups for their valuable contributions in outlining the broad contours and action points related to various aspects of the two-state solution. The stated intent of the international community, as expressed at the United Nations since 1947, has consistently been the establishment of 2 states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security. In 1974, the question of Palestine was reintroduced in the General Assembly's agenda, and since then, it has reaffirmed the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, national independence, and sovereignty. Deliberations during the preparation for the conference confirmed that the international community continues to believe that there is no substitute for a 2-state solution. In 1988, India became one of the first countries to recognize the state of Palestine with firm support and commitment to the 2-state solution. I am pleased to underscore that India led by example in this regard more than 37 years ago. The conference offers an opportunity to reflect on the path traversed thus far in the journey towards achieving peace through a 2-state solution. Our efforts must now focus on how to bring about a 2-state solution through purposeful dialogue and diplomacy, and bringing the parties to the conflict to engage directly with each other. Reaffirmation of support must take the form of actionable steps that pave the way for the two-state solution. Identification of such steps and their implementation modalities demand our collective attention and effort. Friends, let us be clear on some basic prerequisites. First, the humanitarian assistance pillar demands our immediate attention and action. The human suffering in Gaza continues unabated. Tens of thousands have been killed and many more injured. Several medical facilities have been damaged or destroyed. Children have been deprived of schooling for more than 20 months. Humanitarian aid needs to flow without impediments. Second, let us also not forget the plight of the hostages and their families. There can be no justification whatsoever for terrorism, for addressing any root cause or political grievance. Third, Palestinians in Gaza must have access to food, fuel, and other basic necessities without hindrance. Humanitarian assistance is vital in sustaining life and must remain outside the realm of politics or conflict. Fourth, civilians, including women and children, have the right to lead normal lives. In the years ahead, meticulous reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts of a substantially large scale will be required. To this end, India takes note of the plan endorsed by the leaders of the Arab states. We stand ready to do our share in this important task. Distinguished co-chairs, economic prospects and viability for a Palestinian state are crucial. While aid and support are essential for the Palestinian people in rebuilding their lives, it's equally important to create hope and economic structures conducive for investment and employment. India has been making concerted efforts to bring about a tangible impact on the daily lives of the Palestinian people by implementing human-centric projects in diverse sectors. The total commitment by India on this front stands at around $160 million. In doing so, we have also partnered with the Palestinian Authority and the United Nations. Another vital aspect is security. A stable arrangement that suitably caters to the security needs of both sides is necessary. Neither party should feel insecure. A sovereign, viable, and independent state of Palestine within recognized and mutually agreed borders, living side by side with Israel in peace and security, is a prerequisite for enduring peace and sustainable development. India has been clear on the measures that must be undertaken in the short term. An immediate ceasefire, sustained and unimpeded humanitarian assistance, a release of all hostages, and the path of dialogue and diplomacy. There are no alternatives to these measures. We appreciate the efforts of all friendly states that have facilitated such measures between the parties. Co-chairs, the overall sentiment in this forum is clear. It is also India's earnest desire to see peace and calm prevail in the Middle East. Lasting solutions are required to achieve this. Certain action points are emerging from the conference. Following up on them is the key. Let us not be content with paper solutions, but strive to achieve practical solutions that actually make a tangible difference in the daily lives of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. India expresses its complete readiness to contribute to this noble endeavor. I thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you so much to France and Saudi Arabia for your leadership on this issue. This is an important meeting. It reflects our grave concerns on the war in Gaza, deterioration in the West Bank, and the critical need to preserve the two-state solution. The impetus for today's conference lies in Hamas's horrific attacks of 7 October 23. While New Zealand continues to condemn these attacks, Israel's military response long ago ceased to be proportionate, reasonable, or moral. And Hamas continues to act with complete disregard for human life. New Zealand joins others in again calling for an urgent ceasefire. Hamas must release the remaining hostages. Israel must cease its military action. Humanitarian aid must be surged in immediately without restriction, delivered by principled and experienced humanitarian actors. Chair, the only way out of the immediate Gaza crisis and the broader conflict is political. I would like to offer 5 short points on the way forward guided by New Zealand's long-standing approach to the Middle East peace process. 1. There must be a comprehensive and sustainable two-state solution with secure and recognised borders for both Israel and Palestine. This means the international community must categorically oppose any attempt to annex the occupied Palestinian territories, and it must oppose forced displacement. We do not and we cannot accept the actions by Israel to render a Palestinian state unviable. 2. Direct negotiations between the parties are the only way to achieve a sustainable agreement. We must continue to be clear with all parties that military solutions will not bring peace to the region. Collectively, we need to deliberately build the conditions that will allow the key parties to genuinely engage. This means building the political and economic viability of any future Palestinian state and supporting active engagement from the region. 3. We must support Israel's right to exist in peace and security. Security guarantees for Israel are essential. These must include a reassertion of the Palestinian Authority's principles of non-violence and confirmation that Hamas has no future role in the governance of any Palestinian state. Regional commitments to engagement, integration and normalization of relationships with Israel will be key to creating the conditions under which Israel will feel secure. 4. We must support the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. We strongly support efforts to ensure representative, robust and responsive Palestinian political leadership across the occupied Palestinian territories. These need to manifest in undertaking the elections committed to by the Palestinian Authority and binding commitments to renew political leadership and continue reform. We agree that it is also critical to advance concrete steps to build the economic capacity of a Palestinian state. We welcome the direct commitments from the region and others to support Palestine economically. We also reiterate our call to Israel to fulfill its obligations to ensure the unimpeded flow of Palestinian tax revenue. We cannot expect the governance institutions to function if they are being deliberately strangled. 5. International law must be respected. Israel must uphold its legal, humanitarian and human rights obligations to the civilian population of the OPT, including as an occupying power. Israel's actions, including its withholding and politicization of humanitarian assistance, are unacceptable. Failure to do this not only undermines human rights, but also the long-term prospects for security and stability and the international rules on which we all rely.
Co-chairs, I wish to commend your efforts in organizing this conference in a challenging context. This is a conversation and an opportunity for a broader reflection. Excellencies, Malta has been consistent in upholding the two-state solution as the only feasible, just, and sustainable path towards lasting peace in the Middle East. There is now a real risk that the prospect of a two-state solution could slip away. Last year, the International Court of Justice outlined the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination as a peremptory norm of international law. Like many others in this chamber, Malta has consistently supported this inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. It is for this reason that the government of Malta has taken the principled decision to formally recognize the state of Palestine at the upcoming UN General Assembly in September. This decision reflects Malta's commitment to international law, justice, and the right of peoples to self-determination. We believe that recognition is not merely symbolic, it is a concrete step towards the realization of a just and lasting peace. Such concrete steps are necessary if we are to live up to the spirit of what we advocate. It is also clear that the only way of achieving a sovereign, autonomous Palestinian state in control of its own fixed borders is through negotiation. In particular, we believe that this will require not only political willingness to negotiate from both sides, but the existence of a legitimate Palestinian government entrusted with a popular mandate. Excellencies, current issues must also be addressed with alacrity. Palestinians must immediately be given access to food, electricity, fuel, medical supplies, and other key assistance if we are to prevent even more lives needlessly being lost. In this respect, Malta welcomes the increase in aid entering Gaza over the last days, and we hope that the humanitarian aid, which we ourselves have dispatched with the help of the government of Cyprus and UNOPS, will soon make its way through the Amaltea maritime corridor and reach Gaza. The Palestinians, particularly children, are suffering greatly. They have fallen and are falling victim to starvation and ill health. This must stop. An immediate and durable ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and unimpeded humanitarian access into Gaza will be vital for any peace-building process to succeed. A fully functioning state reflecting the aspirations of the Palestinian people should not be merely a geographic and political expression. It should serve to bring about the social and economic emancipation of the Palestinians. Over the long term, the people of Gaza need hope, governance, and reconstruction. To this end, Malta reiterates its support for the staged approach at the center of the Gaza Recovery, Reconstruction, and Development Plan, and despite limited resources, we are committed to provide funding for this process. Like many others, we also believe that Hamas should not form part of the equation in Gaza's future governance. We are witnessing an alarming acceleration in the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, an expansion that not only violates international law, but also gravely undermines the prospects for a just and lasting peace. Tackling settlements in this region and their expansion is critical to the viability of a Palestinian state. Excellencies, this conference has demonstrated our common realization that platitudes and rhetoric will not get us any closer to peace. Rather, what is needed is a roadmap of concrete actions which will ensure the continued viability of the two-state solution. My government is committed to taking 3 specific actions towards this goal. Malta will continue to lend this political support, including in multilateral fora, to all initiatives.
Australia very much appreciates the leadership of the Republic of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in co-chairing this conference. We acknowledge the efforts of the working group chairs towards achieving tangible progress towards a two-state solution. 77 years ago, the global community envisioned 2 states, the State of Israel and the State of Palestine. Australia shares the frustration of the great majority of countries that a Palestinian state still does not exist today. A two-state solution remains the only hope of breaking the endless cycle of violence, the only hope of a just and enduring peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. On 29 July, Australia and 14 countries released the New York Call, which makes clear that recognition of a state of Palestine is an essential step to a two-state solution. The statement is upfront about the challenges we face, including with the terrorist group Hamas, which we condemn unequivocally and call upon to release all hostages immediately and unconditionally. The statement expresses our determination to work on an architecture for the day after to guarantee the disarmament of Hamas and its exclusion from Palestinian governance. And we acknowledge the support from the Arab League and other key countries in the region to end Hamas' grip on Gaza. Australia welcomes the important commitments made by the Palestinian Authority, condemning the 7 October terrorist attacks, calling for the liberation of hostages and the disarmament of Hamas, committing to terminate the prisoner payment system, committing to school reform, committing to calling elections within a year to trigger generational renewal, and accepting the principle of a demilitarized Palestinian state. These are significant steps that demonstrate the Palestinian Authority is seeking to play its part as a partner for peace. Australia will continue to support the Palestinian Authority as it pursues the path of reform, including through our capacity building and governance initiatives. Co-chairs, Australia is gravely concerned by actions of the Israeli government which are undermining the prospects of two states, including relentless settlement expansion and ongoing impunity for settlement violence. We call on Israel to engage on the question of Palestinian statehood. The world is moving, and a two-state solution is essential for Israel's long-term security. Co-chairs, Australia will keep working with other countries to make a two-state solution a reality, and we urge the whole international community to do the same. Co-chairs, we cannot forget that while we gather, a humanitarian catastrophe is taking place in Gaza. The situation has gone beyond the world's worst fears. Australia is a part of the international call on Israel to comply immediately with its obligations under international law, including removing restrictions on aid and allowing the United Nations and humanitarian actors to do their life-saving work. Israel's excuses and explanations are untenable and without credibility. We reaffirm our call for an immediate return to a ceasefire in Gaza, which offers the best hope of ending the suffering of Gazans and returning the hostages to their families. Australia is committed to a future where both the Israeli and Palestinian peoples can live in peace and safety within secure and internationally recognised borders. Until that day, every effort must be made here and now to safeguard innocent life and end the unacceptable suffering and starvation of the people of Gaza.